Bitcoin is close to becoming worthless.
Let's go. Now, what's the Bitcoin?
Bitcoin's like rat poison.
Yeah. Oh,
The greatest scam in history.
let's get it.
Bitcoin will go to fucking zero.
Yeah.
Alright, you ungovernable misfits. I'm your host, Max. Everybody knows that Bitcoin is useless, worthless, and doomed to fail. But what if everyone's wrong? What if it's the system that is doomed to fail? Join me as I speak to some of the brightest people in the space and slither to the deepest, darkest depths of the Bitcoin rabbit hole. Welcome back to another day of Pleb Minor Month. This is the extended version and we only have one more episode after this one. Today's episode is with Bitcoin Q&A and Lili. Both of them are return guests. Both of them put out some of the best content out there. I decided to get them on to talk about privacy, security and mining. We walk through every step of the way from buying a machine, plugging one in, to actually hashing away, choosing your pool and storing those sats securely. We also announce an incredible giveaway and I want to say thank you so much to Foundation Devices for supplying 2 Foundation Devices passports for giveaways. I'm thinking I'm going to do these as separate giveaways but keep an ear to the ground, look out on Twitter and check the Ungovernable Misfits page. Good luck to everyone who enters. I really hope you enjoy listening to this episode. And again, a massive thank you to Foundation Devices for supplying 2 Foundation passports and also for supporting this show. Bitcoin Q&A has kindly done a video and a walkthrough for one of the incredible features on the passport. I'm going to put a link in the show notes because I think this is a really important one. Best of luck to everyone who enters and also for anyone who wants to get a discount on Foundation Devices passports, you can go to foundationdevices.com and you can use the code BITBYBIT for $10 off. Enjoy the show. Can you hear me now?
There we go. Second time the charm.
Do you know what I was doing before that wasn't working?
No, I don't. But I'm intrigued.
Headphones weren't plugged in.
I was going to suggest something trivial like that, but I didn't want to demean you.
Top quality as always. Well, thanks for joining this retard. I needed some help with the Bitcoin mining month and privacy and security, and I thought who better to have on than you two. And also a massive thank you from Foundation because the giveaways, we've got 2 Foundation Devices passports that are going to be given away. So I thought it would be an opportunity to talk a little bit through what people can do with these devices, how it can help them keep their sats secure and all that good stuff.
Sounds good. Yeah, I've been struggling to keep up with the rate of content that's coming out from you and John. It's been really great to hear. So I've got a lot to catch up on.
Yeah, I really love that you guys are doing this in the bear market because it's the best time to mine, really, and pick up cheap ASICs.
Yeah, well, it's pretty crazy seeing, like me and you were talking when I picked mine up and we were saying like how much these things can fluctuate and people sort of trade on the hardware. But it's been fucking brutal, the price drops on these things. But if you're buying, it's great.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just the price that affects profitability. It's the hash rate. Hash rate's been going up and price has been going down. So it's been hard. And a lot of miners are retiring old hardware. Like I just unplugged my S9s and my M20S. I can't run them anymore.
What do you do with them? You just sell them on then?
Well, I actually gave them away to 2 people that follow me on Twitter and they wanted to get into mining. So I gave it to them for free just so they could experiment with it and see if mining is feasible for them. Because imagine paying so much for a machine and, you know, you have trouble maintaining it. You have trouble connecting it to a mining pool. It's too expensive. It's too loud. So it's always good to experiment and see if you can actually handle running a machine before committing to it.
Yeah, been there, done that.
Yeah, we know.
So, yeah, I mean, what I thought would be really good is like, obviously, we've got so much content going out at the moment. We've had quite a lot of new people reach out and say, I've been inspired, I'm going to start getting into mining. We've had a lot of people who have won S9s and other machines that we've done on the giveaways. I thought like to have some actionable advice for these people so that when they actually plug these things in, they're doing things right from the beginning. So, you know, a big thing we're pushing in this whole month is like, do this rather than DCA at fucking Swan or whatever other company. Go and actually do it with mining. And so what I really want to do is make sure that when people do it, they do it right and they don't trip themselves up. And yeah, I thought that's where you guys come in, is like keep them secure, talk us through maybe like VPNs or other options like that, and then maybe how to actually keep their sats secure and private once they've mined as well. Imagine someone has a machine, they've got some power, they're going to put it in the garage. What should they be thinking about next?
Well, the first thing before even plugging in the machine, I would check with your electricity provider and see if you have the capacity in your home to actually run a machine. So you don't want to be exceeding, 80% capacity on your electrical circuit and risk frying your house and that. So I would check to see your electricity usage, see where you stand, and then see what capacity you have left. You can go on like asicminervalue.com and check the machine that you plan on plugging in and see how much capacity that takes. And if that capacity is less than what you're using plus 80%, or what you're using is less than 80% and that machine, then I would go ahead and like plug it in.
Okay.
But one thing to remember too is it depends on how you want to, like, if you want to mine for non KYC sats, you need to make sure that you're taking the right OPSEC precautions. You don't want your ISP, your internet service provider, to be stalking you. You don't want the mining pool to get information about you. And like that's where that VPN comes in, like you mentioned, using those VPN channels and like mining through that. Econo Alchemist has a great guide for that. He shows you exactly how to set it up. Or if you're using Brains, you can just use Stratum v2, and Stratum v2 will protect you from snooping and potential like hash rate jacking.
Okay, yeah, we just had Jan on from Brains a couple of days ago. He went quite deep into the Stratum V2 stuff, but he's a big brain. And when he started talking, to be honest, I was struggling to keep up. Some people will when they listen to that pod, but can you do like a bit of an overview of what that's doing and how it's protecting their privacy?
Yeah, sure. I can go ahead and cover that. So the way that mining is now is you can compare it to like HTTP websites. With HTTP, your internet service provider can see that you're on a specific site, and they can see exactly what you're doing with that site. So today, mining is similar to that, where all that data being between a miner and their chosen mining pool is out in the open to see. What Stratum v2 does is it creates like a mask. It basically is the HTTPS of mining. So it masks the activity that's happening between you and the pool, but it still shows that there is like a connection to a pool. So you're
Okay.
getting like an encrypted connection.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. So everything else before is what, like clear text and completely viewable?
Yeah, and what that does too is it exposes you to hash rate jacking. So if somebody can, like a very sophisticated neighbor or adversary, can see that you're mining, they can actually steal your hash rate if they know that it's there, and they're going to collect the payouts on your behalf instead of you. So running Stratum v2 is one of the easiest ways to protect yourself. If you want to go further and show that there is no connection to a mining pool at all, then I would use the multiple VPN tunnels, which Econo Alchemist describes. And what that does is it automatically routes mining traffic to the tunnel with the least latency. Latency is just
Okay.
like the speed.
Hmm.
What happens is if there's too much latency between you and the mining pool, then you risk submitting stale shares. And stale shares are shares submitted to a block after it's been mined. So you
Okay.
don't get paid based on that. But if you're using this VPNs, then you're gonna reduce your latency, and you're not gonna be submitting any stale shares.
Even if you're using that, is there sort of any stats on how much slower it is or how much of a problem it can cause, or is it just going to be just as fast as a normal connection?
I guess it just depends on like where you're living. I guess that depends on your actual Wi-Fi connection. With this, it's if your Wi-Fi connection is good, it's going to be very close to that original connection without the VPNs,
Okay.
because the VPN tunnels are routing to the right channels. If you're using just a regular VPN with nothing to account for latency, then it's going to be significantly slower. Talking maybe a couple minutes, but that matters when you're mining. It doesn't matter when you're browsing the internet.
Okay, cool. So, Econo Alchemist guide. I think you just dropped a guide as well, haven't you? I know you sent me something, but I haven't yet read.
Yeah, so I just released the Bitcoin mining OPSEC and privacy guide, and I actually go into what Stratum V2 is. I go into using proxies, using these multiple VPN channels. I link to Econo Alchemist guide, but this guide is for people who want to mine Bitcoin in the most OPSEC conscious way possible. So I start from setting up how to identify scams when you're shopping for hardware, how to communicate with the hardware buyer, the hardware seller, best communication apps to use. And then I talk about actually plugging in your miner, how to secure the site where you're going to plug them in, how to reduce your power consumption, how to reduce your heat signature, how to handle noise pollution. And then that data protection section is where I talk about Stratum V2 or using VPNs. And then I go into like pools, how to handle pool accounts, how to protect your information, how to handle payouts, how to store them, how to coin join them. And then if you are someone who likes to use your Bitcoin for collateralized loans, or you want to sell some of your Bitcoin to cover your mining expenses, I cover that. And then I cover social media use, how to keep your information private online, which is useful for people like us who do mine, but we're, more in the open. So just to not show certain things online, not talk about certain things. And then also web browsing privacy. If you're doing everything right with mining, your tracks are covered, but you're researching mining stats, or you're checking your apps without a VPN, then your ISP can still see, okay, well, this person has a mining pool account. We might not know where it is, but because they're logged into this app without a VPN, we know that it's there.
Okay, perfect.
And
Well,
then the last section is just, yeah.
there's the latency with my shitty Wi-Fi.
Oh
I was
my
just going to
gosh.
say that we will share that, if that's okay with you, on Ungovernable Misfits, and also link it at the bottom of the show just so anyone can have a read through.
Yeah, I'd love that. I'm going to release it today, or I'm going to announce it on Twitter, and then you can share it. I think it's a great guide, and it's everything that I wanted in one place when I got started.
Perfect. Q&A, do you want to chime in and talk a little bit about why people should care about everything Lily's just said there, and what your thoughts are maybe on this kind of DCAing the right way with a miner? I don't think you've jumped into it, same as me at this stage, but like your overall view of it.
Yeah, you broke up slightly, so I only caught half of the second question. But to answer your first question, so just to chime in, just to cap off like the mining specific stuff that Lily's just spoken about. Obviously, she's far more experienced with this sort of stuff than I am, living in the United Kingdom where energy prices are somewhat extortionate. He's had a couple of mentions already. Econo Alchemist with his guide, which I've got in front of me now, and it's a 40-minute read, so it's very in depth as Econo Alchemist likes to go. I've just coming back about the latency thing. In his conclusion, he mentions that with his setup that obviously he covers in the guide, his latency improved when he was using the load balanced VPN tunnels versus not using them at all. So not only has he gained privacy from his ISP, but he's also gaining marginal increase in mining revenue because of that reduced latency. So I thought that was really interesting and not what I expected to see at all. I guess that's where the kind of load balancing bit comes in, that I think he's running 5 different VPN tunnels. So presumably his setup will switch between the most optimal ones so that he's always got that really quick connection to his pool so that he's maximizing or minimizing any rejected packets. So I just wanted to share that because I found it really interesting just to pick up on that. And yeah, I'm going to have to ask you to repeat your second bit of your question, Max. I only caught sort of a half of it.
The other question was, with everything we've just gone through there, do you want to just do a bit of a rundown as a non-miner, what your thoughts are on this idea of DCAing with mining and that being a way to accumulate sats, and your kind of thoughts of maybe things moving more towards that direction?
Yeah, absolutely. So, it doesn't take a genius to work out that, well, all three of us on this podcast, but especially me, are a massive staunch advocate of obtaining Bitcoin via no KYC sources. That comes from, plain and simple, comes from my personal view of Bitcoin, is that we are here to sort of separate money and state. We hear that mentioned all the time in Bitcoin, especially on Twitter, and I think a lot of people just pay lip service to it. But for me, the first step towards achieving that goal is to obtain this thing that we sometimes like to call fuck you money outside of the usual channels, so that we're not having to ask for permission to buy Bitcoin or give our driver's license or our stepson's middle name or our heart rate at the time that we sign up to the exchange. Obviously, I'm being a bit facetious here, but some of the information that you do have to provide from some of the regulated exchanges is quite horrifying, to be honest with you. So, for me, the first step to to go towards playing that part of separating money and state and having this fuck you money is obtaining it privately. Now, there's loads of different ways that you can do that. Lily's got loads of guides on it. I've got loads of guides on it. You've posted loads on Ungovernable Misfits as well. You've got Bitcoin ATMs. You've got peer-to-peer exchanges like BISC, HODL. There's a new mobile one called Peach, where you can buy from all over the world from other privacy respecting individuals. Little tangent, but yeah, I've done a couple of trades on it, and yeah, fantastic experience. So can't speak highly enough of it. So yeah, we've got ATMs, peer-to-peer exchanges. You've got cash trades. If you go to a Bitcoin meetup, there's always a couple of OGs there that want to offload some Bitcoin for some fiat because they need to pay some bills. Another good incentive to get involved into the community. And then that leads us on to mining as well. Mining is arguably the easiest way to auto DCA privately, as much as I hate the term auto DCA. So you're going to have a little bit of a hurdle to get over in terms of obtaining the miner. Obviously, you're going to have some capital cost up front. That's pretty obvious. You're going to need to check out the power arrangements in your house, like Lily alluded to earlier. You're going to need to know what to do with your networking. We've spoken about Econo Alchemist earlier, and he demonstrates the absolute perfect way to do it. I would argue that you shouldn't sort of rush to do that straight away. Better to just get hashing first. But once you've gone over those three main hurdles, that device or multiple devices just sit there hashing away, earning you small amounts of Bitcoin regularly without any further input. All you've got to do is keep that miner fed and watered with some electricity and make sure that you're cooling it adequately. And it's kind of there just stacking Bitcoin on your behalf. So as a hands-off way to obtain Bitcoin privately, I think it's arguably the best. And I'm a little bit salty that I can't really get my hands feasibly on a miner and mine, even at a slight loss. It would be catastrophic for me to plug a miner in at my energy costs. But yeah, from a no KYC, obtaining Bitcoin in a no KYC method, mining is way up there with one of the best ways to do it.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, cool. So it's got the nod from all of us. Lily, do you want to dive in now that we've gone through the sort of the ways to set up in terms of VPN and all these kind of things, but actually in terms of setting the machine up, thoughts around different pools as options? Obviously, we've had Brains on, we've had Medi on as well, because they've now got this option to use BIP47, which is really cool. Any thoughts around that? Presumably that's like kind of the next thing you have to think about.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's cool that like Lincoln Pool is offering that, because I've been pestering Brains to offer it for probably over a year now, and like they haven't implemented the BIP47. But if you're not using a pool that supports BIP47, you just need to make sure to constantly update that mining pool address, and because you don't want to reuse addresses that can degrade your privacy. And I think with respect to actually choosing a pool and payout system that works for you, I personally enjoy the pay per last shares N, which is PPLNS. The reason for that is because the fees are so much cheaper versus a full pay per share pool or pay per share pool. And the difference is there with the PPS, the pay per share pools, is that you outsource or you give the variance risk to the pool, which means that you know what your payouts are going to be every single time. You get paid out proportionate to the hash rate that you contribute to that pool, regardless if that pool finds a block or not, which is good, but that puts all the risk on the pool, which means that you're paying a higher fee to get that structured and guaranteed payout with a pool like Slush Pool, which is PPLNS, that pay per last in shares structure. You're assuming that variance risk. And what that means is in one period, one day you might find a block, one day you might find 7 blocks, the next day you might not find any blocks. So if the pool doesn't find any blocks, or if they find 1 or 2, you're getting less rewards. But to be honest with you, like that doesn't matter long term. Like if you're planning to be a miner long term, that variance risk actually flatlines. And it's the same for a PPS pool or a pool like Slush Pool, which is PPLNS. And I'm always for maximizing your reward. So I would go for a pool like that and pay lower fees.
Okay, so presumably someone who wants PPLNS, anyone who's looking to hold those sats and they're not too highly leveraged, where like not finding a block for a few days and being able to sell that Bitcoin is going to mess them up, then you'd say that's probably best for most people.
Yeah, for sure. And like PPLNS, that also encourages loyalty to the pool and discourages pool hopping, which some miners do. Like they go from one pool to another to try to maximize their profits. Because if a miner disconnects from a PPLNS pool, all the shares that they contributed before a block find are lost. So the miners are incentivized to stick with that pool. And I think that makes the pool stronger to have
Okay.
that.
Outside of Brains, then, any others that you suggest, or is that sort of the favoured pool for people at the moment?
That's the one that I've been using since I started, but I know F2 Pool is also a solid pool. They have great service. They have a lot of hash rate. But I can't endorse another pool that I haven't used.
No, of course. Yeah, definitely.
Like that's not something I can do. But always, do your own research, see if that pool has a reputation, see how much hash rate they contribute. What I will say though is I would not recommend a pool that engages in hash rate management. Some pools do this and they hide that they do that, which is when they switch between mining Bitcoin to mining Ethereum to mining Litecoin or BSV or whatever it is. They're basically trying to mine the coin that's giving them the highest profit at that time. But what happens with profit switching is you're like disconnecting from the Bitcoin pool and connecting to the Ethereum pool or whatever pool, and you're losing that time when you're disconnecting and reconnecting. And that actually reduces your rewards over time. So even if that algorithm is saving you money in the short term, it's not going to be doing that in the long run.
I'm going to quickly switch seats to the interviewer seat here because as a non-miner, I have a question I'm curious about that's fairly topical. Between the different pools, do you know if there's differences in withdrawal frequency and limits that the user can define?
I think from what I know, is like you can change that payout address and frequency as much as you like. Some people can even choose to get paid out daily. Like Slush Pool doesn't have like limits.
I feel like maybe there are, though. Not that I know fuck all about any of this, but I did a pod the other day with someone who has one S9 that's underclocked because he's running it on solar, just like 5 hours a day.
Oh, okay.
And he was saying something about he's actually solo mining or part of a solo mining pool or whatever. I can't remember what it was exactly, but because the limit was, I want to say like 100,000 sats or 1,000,000 sats. It was something like that. And he was like, I don't know if I'll ever even hit that.
Oh, yeah. There's like amounts. I thought you meant you changing the frequency of your payout. Like if you want to do once a week or every other week.
Yeah, the question was on both as to whether there's differences across the pools. So whether, Brains Pool says that you've got to get to a minimum of 1,000,000 sats and, you've got to wait at least a week between withdrawals, and whether Lincoln Pool does something completely different. I just didn't know whether that was a deciding factor when you're choosing a pool.
Yeah, I think that's a deciding factor if the hash rate that you have to contribute is really small. Some my thing is you should take custody like early and often with your payouts. So if there's a pool that's restricting you once a month or more, I wouldn't really recommend using them.
Yeah, and I tell you the reason why I bring this up because just last week we had the mining pool that's called Poolin that's been discovered to be insolvent essentially, and they suspended withdrawals to all of their miners. Now, what that's going to do is incentivize any miner that's got their head switched on in a different pool to start withdrawing as frequently as they can, which makes perfect sense. Now, if you take that to the extremes and they start withdrawing maybe daily, then I think there's going to be a potential issue in the future where lots of miners are going to have wallets with a shit ton of fairly small UTXOs, which in the current state of the mempool, where 1 sat per byte pretty much gets you into the next block most of the day, that's not really an issue. But when we run into, we've seen upwards of 200 sats per byte before, there's a distinct potential that some of those really small UTXOs where they're withdrawing daily because they want to take self-custody might not be feasible to spend. So I think that miners looking forward, if they do take that approach, they're going to have to start looking at some active UTXO management and doing some consolidations to prevent or to mitigate the risk of a high fee environment where they may be effectively priced out of their own UTXOs. That kind of makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I agree with you. It's going to become more of a problem down the line as the price changes and like the payout rules change. But I think that's why it's important too for them to understand, like you said, UTXO management, but also spending, how to spend that Bitcoin after it's paid out. Because you can't, if you want maximum privacy, you can't just spend it like after you get a payout. You need to coin join it.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, Max, go on.
I was actually just going to say, should we dive into coin join implementations and best practices for people so that they can protect themselves once they withdraw from the pool?
Yeah, so that's a good point that you make. So let's say that you've been auto DCAing. I said it again. What am I doing? You've been mining regularly with BrainsPool for 6 months, and you've got loads of UTXOs. Obviously, by the very nature of BrainsPool being the pool operator, they know that all of those UTXOs belong to the same person. Now, depending on how you're connected to Brains and depending on what information you have opted to share with them, they may or may not know exactly who you are. They may know roughly where you live if you haven't masked your IP address when connecting the pool. That might prompt you to try and get some privacy from them. In general, stacking via mining is pretty private, but there's the weak link is that the pool has most of the information on you. So CoinJoin is a great option where you can perform essentially a collaborative transaction with loads of other privacy preserving Bitcoiners and to obfuscate the where your Bitcoin goes after that transaction so that the pool can kind of see, okay, well, I know Lily's mining with BrainsPool and we've paid her out over the last 6 months to these 100 different addresses. So we know that Lily owns this much Bitcoin. If Lily was to then merge some of those UTXOs, she might do 10 at a time, she might do 50 at a time, or she might do 5 at a time. It doesn't, it's that sort of number is fairly trivial. She could combine them into a Whirlpool coin join via Samurai or Sparrow wallet, and that would essentially put a brick wall in the trail. The trail of where her Bitcoin goes on the output side of that transaction would kind of go cold. So if the pool decided to get a bit snoopy and try and find where Lily's spending her Bitcoin, if she's using a proper coin join implementation like Whirlpool, then it's going to be very, very difficult for anybody on chain, especially the pool, to distinguish where her coins have gone on the output side of that transaction. Fortunately, with Whirlpool, the incentive structure is built such that remixing is completely free. So once you've paid for your first mix, as long as you keep your Whirlpool client online, you can sit there forever and a day and continue to get remix after remix. And your anonymity set, which is kind of the size of the crowd that you would be hiding in, starts to grow exponentially with every remix that you and or your partners get from any of your mixes. So it's a beautiful incentive structure, getting really easy to use, particularly now in a desktop environment with Sparrow. So all of that to say that if Lily was to take those steps, which would take 30 minutes, and then she just got to leave her Whirlpool client online after that first transaction, Brains Pool or whoever's pool she's mining with would not have a clue where her Bitcoin have gone thereafter. So she's kind of got the best of both worlds there, where she's mining via no KYC, so she hasn't got like a single large tech conglomerate that knows that she bought this much Bitcoin at this time, and here's her ID and here's her date of birth, etc. She not got that, but now the entity, the mining pool that she's connected to, also don't know where those Bitcoin have gone. So the best of both worlds, really.
Yeah, I also think there is a huge misconception among new miners that think they don't have to coin join. I don't know who started this rumor or where it came from, but they say it's like fresh Bitcoin and they don't have to coin join. That's only true if you're solo mining, if you're getting paid directly from the Coinbase, which is not the case for miners joining a pool.
It's probably the case for very, very, very few people, isn't it, really? And like Q&A has just said, like, you're giving your information to a mining pool, so they have your information. It's still better, though, isn't it? It's a lot better than the alternative. Yeah. It's just we're talking about like how to protect yourself in the best way. And so one thing, when you were talking through using Whirlpool, I was thinking, well, if you're a smaller miner and best practice is for every withdrawal, you use a fresh address. So if you do that and it's still smaller amounts, and then you've got all these separate UTXOs with smaller amounts, does that not get very expensive then to put into Whirlpool? Is there a more efficient way of doing it without fucking up your privacy? Like, what are the options?
Yeah, so one of the key trade-offs, you're absolutely right. If you're taking regular smaller withdrawals, obviously that's better from a custodial perspective because you're in control of it as the maximum amount of your mined Bitcoin at any one time. That is going to create lots of smaller outputs that you are going to have to pay to spend. So it's definitely a trade-off and kind of something that if you are a home miner, to consider, what do you value more? Are you happy with a little bit more third-party risk and leaving, having less frequent withdrawals so that you need to pay less miner fees thereafter? Or would you like to self-custody the maximum amount as soon as possible? Then if you want to take that approach, then you're going to have to be prepared to do some UTXO management and potentially be prepared to pay some more fees. I would err on the side of the latter and be prepared to pay slightly more fees. And I say that from a place of, obviously, the mempool for at least the last couple of months has been pretty much dead. There's always been at least a couple of times a day where one sat per byte gets you into the mempool. So you can again have the best of both worlds by having more frequent withdrawals. And then what you can do is as a double whammy, you can do some UTXO consolidation at the same time as entering Whirlpool. So let's go back to the analogy of Lily, who's mining with Brains Pool, and she's got 100 small withdrawals to 100 different UTXOs. She could, at the end of that 6 months, that she's in full control of all of those. She's just got loads of UTXOs in her Sparrow wallet, let's say. She could wait for a quiet time in the mempool, and then she could combine all of those UTXOs in one single transaction. She's going to pay slightly more fees, but she could do that in the middle of the night when it's one sat per byte. She can combine all of those UTXOs into Whirlpool and then have Whirlpool output one or, just a couple of larger UTXOs. So not only is she gaining privacy from the pool, but she's performing some UTXO management and combining those in a privacy preserving way, such that on the output side of the transaction, she's got good privacy and she's only got a handful of UTXOs to manage. So again, it's the best of both worlds. You're gaining privacy and you're managing the wallet at the same time.
Good point. Any thoughts on that, Lily?
I'm with him. I completely agree. Like, that's the best way to manage this. And it's worth dealing with because you're getting those private sats, and it's easier to deal with that versus dealing with the tax nightmare that is KYC.
Yeah, and I guess not just the tax nightmare, but also the potential for $5 wrench attacks or other knocks at your door or whatever else could happen in the future.
My thing is, if you can anticipate a risk and like work to prevent it, why wouldn't you? That's what mining is. Mining is the best way to prevent that KYC risk. I mean, if you see Bitcoin as freedom money, some people don't see it that way. Some people just see it as an asset, and that's okay.
I think it makes sense to do it that way. What would you say for everyone, and there are lots of them, surprisingly, who will say, well, what about just using the same address every time? I'll just leave it in and use the same one for the mining pool, because if I'm going to coin join it anyway, why not?
Well, that's not really like a good practice, because the mining pool can like build that like understanding of you and find out that you're the one that's mining that, and
I think the trade off here is that obviously the mining pool knows every address that they're paying out belongs to the same person. And again, we've covered that they may or may not know exactly who you are, or you may just be an IP address to them. So you kind of can't get away from the fact that the mining pool knowing that information, that all of those addresses, be that one address that's paid to 100 times or 100 different addresses that are paid to once. But what you are showing is to anybody else on the blockchain that one address that you're reusing for 100 times is owned by the same person. So I could look at your address and then I would know. So it's not only that the fact that the mining pool has that information on you, you can't get away from that. Everybody else that has access to mempool.space or similar can also see that information as well. So you're exposing that address is owned by the same person. Instead of it being for one entity, you're showing the whole Bitcoin network.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, so someone has chosen their pool, they plugged their machine in, they have withdrawn, they've decided to go through Whirlpool. What's next in terms of storage, labeling, everything else? Is there anything that you can share that Foundation Devices is working on, or any tips and tricks to make sure that when people put all this work in, they don't lose their sats?
Yeah, I think, well, obviously it depends on what the miner, what the intentions the miner has for those sats after they've coin joined them. If this is somebody that's living on Bitcoin, then they're probably going to want to keep at least a portion of that in some form of mobile wallet so that they can use it to spend or buy gift cards or, pay bills, etc. But inevitably, there's going to be a portion of that they're going to want to save, and presumably they would, or I would advise that they do that to a cold storage device like Passport. Obviously, that disclosure, Lily and I work for Foundation Devices, so we are somewhat biased to say that we think it's the best one. So yeah, one of the new exciting features that we've that ties in nicely to the conversation that we just had is we're adding with the next firmware update, which is currently in live open beta, so you can actually get your hands on it now if you want it. If you want to wait for the main release, it'll probably be out in about 7 days. It's called the Postmix extension. Essentially, what that is a really one-click way to add the Postmix Whirlpool account to your Passport cold storage seed. So what that enables you to do is use something like, let's say, Sparrow. Sparrow has this great function called Mix2, where you can, if you're using Sparrow as your Whirlpool client, you can tell Sparrow to mix directly to an external wallet that it is also managing. So that could be your Passport hardware wallet. So you can tell Sparrow to say, right, after these UTXOs that I've just mined have 5 Whirlpool rounds, on the next round, I want you to send each UTXO on its own to a fresh address in my Passport wallet. By doing that, not only is it a hands-off way to do it, Sparrow will look after it for you. You don't incur any additional miner fees because the send from the Whirlpool round to your cold storage wallet is the same transaction. So you're doing that completely for free as well. There's no miner fees involved.
You missed that extra hop.
Exactly. So if you've got a lot of UTXOs, that's a fairly big saving if miner fees do increase. That's one of the benefits. And then if you do that to the Postmix account that we're adding to Passport, it's just a generic account, the same as all the others. It just has a unique account number. You can interact with it and spend from it in the exact same way that you would a normal account. It's no different in that respect. But what you can do then is store those sats for, say, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, however long that you want. But because they're in the Postmix account, which is a specific derivation path for the more technical listening to this, is that you can then, at any time in the future, make that seed hot by importing it into another Whirlpool client, so Samurai or Sparrow, and then continue remixing for free, no fees whatsoever. And then because that seed is then online, you can also make use of the spending tools within Sparrow and Samurai, such as Stowaway, Stonewall X2, all of the collaborative transactions like that. So it's kind of a foolproof way so that you can mix directly to cold storage, store for an indefinite amount of time, and then if you choose to in the future, make that seed hot and then continue remixing for as long as you want. No extra fees. You've already paid the fees, however many years before when you entered that first mix. So yeah, a really great way to do that if you want to take some sort of risk off the table in terms of having some funds hot so you can get them away into your passport. But then also know that, in a couple of years' time, if I want to continue remixing and continue to increase my anonymity set, then I can also do that as well.
That's really interesting. How does that look for someone using the device? It sounds relatively technical. Is it going to be something that's complicated to set up?
Not at all. That's so we've built this new extensions menu. So all you do is go into the settings of Passport, and there's currently 2 extensions in there. These are just like add-ons, if you like. One is the Casa app. So if you want to use Passport with Casa, the collaborative custody solution, and the other one is Postmix. All you need to do is literally just turn it on. It's just a toggle. When you turn it on, it will add a new account screen to Passport, and then you would just pair that with any wallet of your choice. Obviously we're using Sparrow as an example because it's a Whirlpool client. So you would just pair that in the exact same way that you would a typical account within Passport. So just by a little QR code exchange, and that's it. That's literally it. That's the only interaction with Passport that you need to do. The rest of it's done within Sparrow, where you kind of dictate after 5 mixes, send these UTXOs to that Postmix account that's completely cold storage. Self-shill, I've already done a tutorial video on this, which is going to be dropping the exact same day that the 2.0.4 firmware goes live. So yeah, particularly for people who value privacy, especially the miners as well, that might have a lot of UTXOs to manage. I think this is a really great way to not only gain your privacy, but to do so in a secure way so that you can, like I say, take some risk off the table if you're not comfortable with having large amounts of funds kind of sat within a Sparrow hot wallet. One caveat I will say is, obviously, I mentioned in 5 years' time, if you wanted to then make that seed hot to continue remixing or to make use of the collaborative transaction spends like Stonewall, X2 and Stowaway, obviously, if you've got all of your Bitcoin in this account and you might only want to spend a little bit, then you're going to have to make the whole seed hot just to spend like 5 million sats or just to continue remixing a small portion. The better option is to make a new seed on Passport so that you just use that as your mix too. So let's say you make a decision that, right, I want to put away 50 million sats into the Postmix account, and I'm happy to leave that there, knowing that I might want to remix that in a couple of years' time, 5 years' time, whatever. But then also know that, that might be sort of, 5% of your stash, and the other 95% of your stash can live in a normal account on a different seed, which is also controlled by Passport. So it makes sense to segregate those seeds so that in the future, when you want to continue remixing, you don't have to bring your whole stash hot just to spend a small portion of it.
Cool. Any other security tips that people should be taking into account when they're storing their sats? Any more tips, tricks, any more features? Because obviously we're giving 2 of these passports away for lucky listeners. So someone listening to this is likely to get their hands on one. What should they be looking out for? Yeah,
I think it's worth mentioning Envoy, our mobile companion app that we've recently released. So Envoy is kind of a watch-only wallet tailored specifically towards Passport. Doesn't currently work with any of the hardware wallets. So for people who kind of don't want the hassle of, say they don't want to do a coin join, or they don't like using a computer and they just want to manage their cold storage from their mobile phone or interface with their cold storage from their mobile phone, we've purpose-built Envoy to make that as simple as possible. So it's essentially a mobile application that you pair or connect Passport to, again, via that simple QR code exchange. And that will allow you to then receive into your cold storage without needing to interact directly with Passport. You can keep that locked in your safe. You only need to then bring that out to if you want to make any spend transactions. So for the vast majority of people who are just using Bitcoin as more as a savings vehicle, then I think Envoy is a really great option for that, and we purposely made it sort of without most of the bells and whistles that advanced users might come to expect, just to make it a really frictionless experience, such that it's kind of like the least stressful mobile wallet experience that you'll ever have. I think to tie it back into mining as well, if you do use a pool that requires manual address changes, then doing that from your phone, you could do that anywhere. You don't need to interact with your cold storage device. So you could just open Envoy, tap on receive, and then just copy and paste that straight from your phone into your mining pool dashboard. And, so if you're one of the more frequent or one of the miners who benefits from more frequent withdrawals, then, you could do that in 30 seconds directly from your phone. And I suppose also on the privacy standpoint, we default Envoy to connect over Tor. So literally from the moment that you open the device, before you even connect a passport, Foundation doesn't learn anything about you, that all the connections default over the Tor network. So there's no IP address login, there's no Xpubs login. Basically, we learn absolutely jack about who's using Envoy, and that's by design. Nice. We wanted it to be simple, and we wanted the guide rails to be high, so that even somebody who doesn't care about privacy, or doesn't yet care about privacy, should I say, we've built those guide rails high enough such that when they come to realize further down the line that they value that, they'll look back and think, oh, actually, they made some good design decisions here, such that when it didn't matter to me or I didn't know any better, they were kind of looking out for me.
Very cool. All right, guys. Well, unless there's anything I have missed, I think we've covered quite a lot there. I just wanted to say thank you for jumping on the pod and giving everyone the advice. It's really, really helpful. And also a massive thank you to Foundation for giving these 2 passports away. I want one myself. They sound fucking awesome. And I look forward to giving them away to some lucky pleb.
I've got one here for you, by the way.
Oh, do you?
Oh, that's nice.
You just made my day.
Now I'm jealous.
You surely have got one.
I still don't have one.
Oh, for fuck's sake, Foundation. You need to sort your lives out.
Left out.
Well, I feel sort of sorry for you, but I'm so happy for myself that I can't really feel sorry for you. I've got a big smile on my face.
I'm just going to take those free passports back.
So anything that we missed, Lily, on the mining side, anything that you can think of that would be helpful for people?
Yeah, just like 2 small points. The first thing is a lot of miners check their payouts and stuff from their phone. So when they're using those apps, just to make sure to turn on a VPN or use Orbot so that they can protect their activity. Because the last thing they want to do is just give that away at the last second. And then if you're like a larger scale hole miner and you want to hedge yourself against price declines, there's like hedging strategies that you can implement. And I know this is like more advanced, and I did write about this. And one thing I do is I use crypto mining stocks to hedge my my Bitcoin rewards, which has paid off a lot in the sell-off. So what I do is to hedge against those Bitcoin price declines, I buy put options on these stocks. So if the Bitcoin price declines, I'll profit from that, regardless of whether or not the option is in the money or not. This is really good for people who have a financial background or their electricity price is really high and they're kind of towing the line between being profitable and not being profitable depending on the Bitcoin price. And I'm happy to help anyone with that if they want to reach out via DMs.
Perfect. Yeah, well, there's a lot of people who will be needing something like that. As you say, especially for like a bigger miner, it's really important.
Totally.
If that's everything covered, thank you both once again. Lily, I feel really sorry for you. Maybe enter under a NIM to win your own prize. So give us the prize and then win the prize back.
All right, Max. Game on.
All right. Thanks so much. And we'll share that article and everything else. And Q&A, maybe let me know when that video drops and I'll share that as well.
Yeah, it should be next week, but I'll ping you. Yep.
Nice one. All right. Cheers, guys. Speak soon.
Cheers, guys. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening, and thank you to everyone who's been showing support for Bit by Bit and also for the Pleb Miner Month. Everyone who's been streaming sats, everyone who's been sending messages, testing the website, buying merch, and everything else. I really do appreciate it, and thank you so much. If you haven't already checked out the website and all of the incredible content we have there, go to ungovernablemisfits.com. And if anyone has any questions, do feel free to reach out and I'll answer anything I can or put you in touch with anyone for the things that I can't help with. Catch you on the next one.